Hi there, I'm Josh Rushing. Welcome to the Stream Home Edition. I'm sitting in for the irreplaceable Femi OK today, broadcasting to you live from my home. All right, let's start off. We're on YouTube right now, right? You're watching this. Check out that box over there and join me in this discussion. Give me some questions to ask the guest today. I'd love to have you be a part of the show. Now, let me ask you this. Have you heard of this app called Tik-Tok? It's a social media app. Here, check out some videos. It's mostly like, short, fun videos, dance challenges, I don't know, cooking tips, makeup tips. I love a wet cat. Anytime I can see a wet cat, I like the way these guys dance. I don't personally have TikTok, but I'm looking at this thinking maybe I should. This seems fun. It streams through. Well, look, this app, I have to tell you, it's actually grown into a behemoth. I want to show you something on my computer real quick. These are the top apps worldwide for May 2020 by downloads. Check out number one in the world is TikTok, above Zoom, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram. TikTok, over 2 billion people have downloaded this app. It has over 800 million regular users. But what began as this kind of fun video thing has actually become a bit of a center of international intrigue. And that's what we're going to talk about today with an excellent panel of guests on this. Now, I'm going to ask our guests to introduce themselves to you. We're going to start with Bethany. Bethany, can you tell us who you are and why you're here today?
Yeah, my name is Bethany Allen Abrahamian, and I'm the China reporter at Axios, where I have been following TikTok and national security concerns.
Okay, cool. And also joining us from Bangalore is Varsha.
Hi, my name is Varsha
Hello.
Bansal. I've been a tech journalist for about 4 to 5 years. And right now I've just been freelancing for the last 6 to 8 months, writing about technology and TikTok especially. So.
All right. And now from Baltimore is Matthew.
Hi, my name is Matthew Green. I'm a professor at Johns Hopkins in computer science. I focus on computer security and privacy.
All right. So Bethany, can you set us up here? What's the issue? Why are countries talking about, well, not just talking about India, the world's largest democracy, has already banned TikTok, and now there are rumors the U.S. is considering something along those lines. Can you tell us what's the issue here?
So what you need to understand about TikTok is that you can't look at it through the lens of Silicon Valley companies. You need to look at it through the lens of Chinese law. TikTok is owned by a Chinese company. And under Chinese law, any person, any entity in China is required to hand over data or any information to China's security services or government. And not only that, they're also required to keep any assistance that they provide to China's security services a secret. That means that TikTok, under Chinese law, would not be allowed to admit if it had handed over data or any other information to the Chinese government. Now, that's not the only concern. So let's just say that the Chinese government does have some of this data. Well, what it would do with it is also really concerning, because we have seen China turning into an almost totalitarian surveillance state. That's what it wants to do. It takes, people who just, talk about politics, puts them in jail. It's engaged in a genocide in its northwestern region of Xinjiang. You have a government that does not respect privacy, is willing to put anyone in prison, and is actively aiming to collect data on a mass scale, both within China and around the world. And that company is required under Chinese law to hand over data if requested. That's the issue.
So FBI director, if we can go to my computer for a second, I'm going to show you a tweet from Jonathan Chang of the Wall Street Journal. And he's quoting FBI director in a speech where he said, if you're an American adult, it's more likely than not that China has stolen your personal data. And I know it's not just Americans. This is an international issue. Varsha, India has already banned TikTok. TikTok was pretty popular there too, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, beyond popular. I think India is TikTok's largest market, international market outside of China. It launched in 2018. And since then, it has had 1,000 employees in the country. It has had over 200 monthly active users. It has the largest downloads, especially during the lockdown. So India is definitely a huge market for TikTok.
So are India's concerns there? Are they really concerned about their own national security, or is this just a volley in the rising conflict between India and China over the border?
So, I mean, they haven't exactly said that it's a political move. They mentioned, firstly, none of the apps that were mentioned, they mentioned that it's Chinese. They just mentioned that there's 59 apps that are being banned to protect the sovereignty and national security of India. But this move happened right after the political, like a border battle between India and China, where India lost 20 of their soldiers, and it was a really brutal attack by the Chinese, from the Chinese side, and that happened in the middle of June. And on 29 June, 59 Chinese apps were banned. And also, as per the law, the Indian government did not have to reveal that they're banning these apps, but they made an announcement. So it's a very clear political move, but that does not, excuse the fact that there are issues with respect to its privacy.
So the answer isn't national security, like internal concerns or external concerns. It's maybe both. I want to go to our
Yeah.
YouTube comments right here, right away. We've got Calm B says TikTok is a threat only according to those governments who have failed their countries in real situations, like India and the USA. New World is here. Bruh, USA does the same. Thank you, New World. Robert Montoya, anything that gives China easy access to USA citizens at the moment, in my opinion, is not good, period. And one more from House of Hot TV. No technology is 100% safe. In fact, if you want to be safe out there, it says if you want to be safe out of new technologies, I guess it means get out of new technologies. Matthew, is this something we should really be concerned about? And if so, why?
I mean, we should definitely be concerned about it, right? We should be concerned about the fact that apps everywhere are soaking up huge amounts of private data. They're dragging our information into centralized data stores and basically selling them to the highest bidder, sometimes the lowest bidder. This is a big problem, right? It's not just TikTok, it's Facebook, it's pretty much every single one of those apps you showed on that list a few slides ago. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but now we have to ask the question, like, do we treat different pieces of software differently because the people who have access to that data might do different things with it? And it kind of raises the question that if we're this concerned about our data going to China through this particular port, shouldn't we be looking very hard at how our data flows otherwise?
Well, Matt, can you give us a clear sense? What kind of data can TikTok actually get from your phone?
So there have been people who've torn apart the app. They've looked at a bunch of different things. They found that it does a lot of the same things that other standard apps do, just a little bit more aggressively. So, for example, it tries to ping your location every 30 seconds and send that information up. It tries to collect what other apps are running on your system, what kind of phone you're using, what kind of operating system you're using, and so on. This is actually pretty standard stuff. It's just that if we're to believe these reports, it's more that TikTok kind of dials it up to 11 rather than doing it at maybe 7 or 8, which is what your typical Snapchat or Facebook app does.
And Bethany, what's the concern of China having all that information about, I don't know, 13-year-olds in the US?
Yeah, if I can sort of follow on Matt's point there. Now, I understand that from a simple technical perspective, certainly what Matt said is accurate. Again, keep in mind that if TikTok were not owned by a Chinese company, ByteDance, we would be having a completely different conversation about what about its privacy practices. Again, the concern is that it is required by law to hand over data if required to the Chinese government. Now, what might the Chinese government do with that data? This is where we need to talk about what happened in 2016 with the Russian meddling in US elections. So having access to a mass amount of data, and now I'm not talking at the granular level anymore, your individual data, how they might sell that. Rather, I'm talking about having an understanding of how a society interacts with the internet and with content and with politics. The data in the back end, from any social media app or website would provide a huge amount of information about what makes a society move, what goes viral, what gets them upset, how do they act. This is the kind of information that is really dangerous in the hands of a hostile government. And it is so clear that the Chinese government under the Chinese Communist Party views the US with great hostility. That's the concern.
And they actually could use this information to influence the US from within. An example of that just recently is President Trump's rally in Tulsa. Bethany, can you set up the kind of what happened with that and how TikTok was involved with that?
Sure. So, the Trump campaign was going to have this rally, and so what happened was that TikTok users decided to kind of prank, to kind of do a prank and buy up or to reserve a bunch of tickets for this rally. So it appeared to the people in the Trump campaign that the rally was sold out. And the idea is that potentially this may have discouraged people who actually wanted to attend from actually attending the rally. Now, of course, none of these TikTok people actually went, and so the stadium was quite empty. Now, it's hard to say if it would have been empty otherwise, and if this was just sort of some kind of social media prank. But the lack of certainty there is kind of the point. Now, this seems to have been just a completely organic thing that happened, but you get a sense of what TikTok could be or could become. And it's also important to note that right now, TikTok seems like kind of a fun, frivolous, app that's popular among young people. Well, that's what Facebook was 10 years ago. Now it's vital communications infrastructure. Should we wait until TikTok is a vital communications infrastructure before taking these concerns seriously?
And we know the Trump administration is not happy about TikTok. We have a quote here from Secretary of State Mike Pompeo about it that I want to share with you.
We are now evaluating each instance where we believe that U.S. citizens' data that they have on their phones or in their system or in their healthcare records, we want to make sure that the Chinese Communist Party doesn't have a way to easily access that. And so what you'll see the administration do is take actions that preserve and protect that information and deny the Chinese Communist Party access to the private information that belongs to Americans.
Matt, should the U.S. government step in and do something here?
I think, there are two concerns here. One is that stepping in against TikTok is not going to solve the problems that anybody's identifying here. If you're worried about something more than just people getting information about what videos you watch on TikTok, any game you download, anything that you download is going to collect exactly the same kind of information, and it's going to be available to the Chinese Communist Party anyway. You can't close this door unless you do something much more aggressive that actually secures people's phones. And the second thing I would say is that, up until now, and I'm not a lawyer, the Supreme Court has viewed software as protected speech. So the question we should be asking is, can we come in? Can the United States government come in and say this app is now banned? I don't know the law on this, but it scares me because what is the next app that gets banned after this one, and how does that affect our ability to communicate?
Varsha, how has the ban of TikTok affected people in India?
Well, there are two sides to it. One is users, and with 200 million active users using TikTok, at least 20, 30 minutes a day, it's been a major impact on them. And when it comes to the influencer community, there have been about 1.2 million TikTok creators, and a lot of them have been devastated in their own words and trying to figure out what to do next. A lot of clones have come up with trying to replace TikTok. A lot of homegrown apps have come in, and their major feature is that they are proudly Indian, and that's what's it's the App Store is flooded with TikTok clones, which is funny now. So and another point is that just I think a day ago there was a Reuters report about Indian government sending about 77 questions to TikTok and other Chinese apps. And they've given them 3 weeks time to respond to those questions. So we don't know what's going to happen after that, but that's the stage at which we are right now.
I want to share with you a TikTok influencer since you just brought them up. His name's Michael Lee. He's in the US. He has 34 million followers. From what I gather, he does mostly dancing and humorous things. Here he is, part of a kind of a Save TikTok campaign.
Right now, TikTok is on the verge of being banned in the US, and I'm starting a video petition with hashtag Save TikTok. 2020 has had so many tragedies, and TikTok has been one of the most positive outlets for us all, whether it's watching or creating content. Although it has flaws, this one app has created a community with people from all over the world that's been able to bring joy and inspire people. It's built so many careers, including mine, and it's been able to give me the opportunity to support my family, to have a voice, and bring joy to my fans. I've personally had people DMing me say that I've helped them go through hard times and depression because of my content. I love you guys so, so much, and all I'm asking for you guys to do is take a stand with me.
So it feels like we're calling out TikTok, we're calling out the Chinese government, maybe we were calling out the Indian government, the US government, but doesn't the control of this really lie with two companies, Matt? Apple and Google. They have the operating systems that allow the apps to collect this data, right? Couldn't they stop this if they wanted to?
At the end of the day, that is the situation, right? Our phones are supposed to protect us from the random app you download, and that includes TikTok. And so the question is, if information that is critical to our security is leaking out of our phones into TikTok, then the question is, should we be talking to Apple and should we be talking to Google about fixing that? And then should they be making decisions in their app stores about whether, this kind of app is malicious or not? And then maybe guiding TikTok to doing less of that, or, banning TikTok altogether. So the question is whether the government should really be the ones doing this.
Well, isn't it a business opportunity? I mean, I will give my business to whichever company gives me an ability in the operating system to flip one switch that protects me from all of this. Why don't they see that as a business opportunity?
So I think they do. I mean, I think if you look at what's happened with phones in the last few years, there's been a real push to adding privacy features. Nowadays, you get warnings when an app does something like copies something from your clipboard. You can turn off location tracking, and there are all sorts of features that didn't exist 5 years ago that now do exist. Apple even has a whole series of commercials on privacy where they just say, look, privacy is the most important thing, end of commercial. And so I think that there is an understanding, and this entire kind of scandal with TikTok illustrates how critically people care about privacy. So there is a business opportunity here. The question is whether a company like TikTok, which is ad supported, can take advantage of that, or whether we have to look at someone like a hardware maker like Apple.
So Bethany, when the internet started, it seemed like it was this thing that could actually transcend nation states, go beyond borders. China seems to have been able to break that down with the Great Firewall, and not only really try to strictly control what's happening there nationally, but they're really trying to control what's happening around the world on it when it comes to their affairs. Is that correct? Can you explain some of that to me?
Sure. So the Chinese government has a view of the internet, kind of a paradigm of how they think it should be governed. And they refer to that as internet sovereignty, which is that the internet should be just like an actual physical part of your country where there's borders, where laws apply. And from that perspective, every country in the world should have the right to ban whatever it wants, to restrict whatever content it wants. And that goes against the sort of US view, or the view that's been propagated by people in the United States of the internet as sort of a global, open and free kind of place. The Chinese government has become very skilled at applying that kind of framework to its own domestic internet, but it's getting better at applying that abroad as well. And they've even begun to enshrine that in their own law. So if you look at the Hong Kong National Security Law, which was implemented just a couple of weeks ago in Hong Kong, Article 37 says that any pro-Hong Kong democracy speech or organizing or anything else that the Chinese government views as a national security threat that anyone in the world does anywhere in the world is against that national security law. Now, that national security law also calls for the management, the quote-unquote management of the internet. So again, I've spoken with lawyers about this. This applies to the rest of the world. Now, there's the question of enforcement. How are they going to enforce that? But if you have an app like TikTok or some other, very popular Chinese website, or if you have Huawei that's running, telecommunications infrastructure, you can see how it would get much easier for the Chinese government to have a sort of extraterritorial enforcement of their own domestic laws. I want to add one point, if I can, about a potential way to protect at least Americans from the risks posed by TikTok that wouldn't destroy TikTok or threaten our speech freedoms. And that would be through CFIUS, which is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the US. So a couple of years ago, CFIUS, on national security reasons, forced the sale of Grindr, which had been purchased by a Chinese company. They forced that Chinese company to sell it to another company. So TikTok, if TikTok were under CFIUS forced to be sold to a non-Chinese company, a lot of these issues that we've talked about, not all of them, but some of these issues would basically disappear, and the concerns about TikTok would just be normal privacy concerns.
So there's actually a tweet I want to share with you guys. This is from Charles Gasparino, and it says, breaking TikTok, Chinese parent company ByteDance looking at strategic alternatives amid White House review of app and possible ban. Investment bankers say ByteDance weighing several options, i.e. spinoff of TikTok into separate US-based company, outright sell more. Would that solve the issue, guys, if they sold it into a US company? Who wants to jump in on that?
I'll just jump in quickly and say I think that would alleviate a lot of people's concerns in the short run, especially if they sold it outright. Spinning it off into a US-based company, I think would probably not provide the level of protection that American consumers probably want. But in the short term, I think that would help.
But Matt, isn't it naive to assume that the NSA and the U.S. government doesn't have all the information that they want from these social media companies as well?
I mean, of course, the U.S. government and the NSA, we've been caught. You know, the NSA has been caught thanks to the Snowden revelations, collecting huge amounts of information overseas about people, even in our ally countries. So we are certainly collecting this. Maybe that's why we're so paranoid about TikTok in China, because we know we do it. That doesn't make it right, and it's something we should still be concerned about. But I just want to come back quickly to one of the points that was made about Huawei and about other ways that China's tech companies have kind of been distrusted around the world. I also agree that there are major strategic and tactical concerns about foreign businesses being on U.S. soil. I just want to say there's a big difference between TikTok, which is kind of a silly video app that my kids love, and Huawei, which manufactures the core internet infrastructure that some countries are adopting, just in terms of national security issues. So if we're going to go and we're going to kind of unload our, all of our legal ammo into a particular company, maybe we shouldn't be doing it at TikTok.
Just a curious question here. Do you have to agree to all these permissions if you use the app? Is there a way to use the app and deny it permissions to all these other things on your phone?
You can disable certain things like location, and the app will still work. Other things you can disable. I think a lot of the concerns really are on older phones that don't have all the protections rolled out in the latest operating systems. Unfortunately, you're just a little stuck there, and those operating systems kind of leak data like a sieve.
Barsha, what happens next in India? Because they've actually banned TikTok once before and brought it back, right?
Yeah, so that happened in April 2019. TikTok was banned on the pretext of having a lot of pornographic content and possible platform for pedophiles. So there was an issue regarding that. The app was pulled out, but it was reinstated within a couple of weeks. But that was after TikTok got rid of about 6 million videos from the platform. So the reason there was completely different, and privacy with a privacy issue with TikTok has always existed, but most concerns in India have always been about the kind of content it has. It goes against Indian culture. It could have a lot more pornographic content. It could have sleazy content, and it could be distracting. Those were the major reasons why TikTok was considered a problem in this country, until a few months ago when a lot of anti-China resentment sort of started growing, and people were banned TikTok. That was trending on Twitter multiple times. People were smashing phones phones and TVs made from China. So, and right after that, it just escalated very quickly over the last few months.
I want to tell our audience, we tried multiple ways to get in touch with TikTok to try to get them to either be a part of this show or at least provide some sort of comment, to no response. Although they did say in a Reuters article recently that they are reconsidering their corporate structure because of these types of international concerns. I want to thank our guests, Varsha, Bethany, and Matt, for being with us today, helping to break this down. And I'm going to go practice some of my renegade dance moves to see how this TikTok thing works out. In the meantime, be safe, be well, and I'll see you next time on the stream.
Thank you so much.